B'Shem Hashem na'aseh v'natzliach, Shiur Torah, Baruch Hashem, we're back here in Sunny Isles. We're back to our series of Stump the Rabbi, get $50. All of the tzaddikim in the back, you can bring your pizza to the front and start with some serious questions. I have the questions, I have the answers, but that really wouldn't be so much fun for you guys. So I'm hoping that you guys have some questions. Yesterday, people had some questions, but a few people left before they got to ask their questions. There is a few things I wanted to cover. But let's see if you have the questions first, because what I have to cover is probably going to be at least a half hour worth of material, if not more. But the simple rules are this. You ask a question, any question that you have, and my job is, Hashem, is to show you what the Torah opinion is about it. What's Dat Torah? The reason why we do this is for a few reasons. Number one, it's first and foremost to remind ourselves that our opinion is null and void. Our opinion, regardless of how smart you are, regardless of how high or low your IQ is irrelevant. Today, tomorrow, yesterday, in 20 years from now, your opinion will always be null and void. Why? Because after all, you're still human. And humans are biased. They're biased, their opinions are biased. You ask somebody, do you like such and such? If the person has a family connection to that person, most of the time, they're going to say yes, even if in their heart they say no. If you say, do you like a certain business? If the person works for that company or that's his business, most of the time he'll say yes, even though he doesn't really like the business. Point is that our opinions are biased. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's opinion is not biased. Why? Because he tells you exactly what he wants and what he's wanted and what he will always want, regardless of what we do. He created the world with such instructions. He created the world with that particular opinion. And machshevotai lo machshevotechem. He says, my thoughts are not like thoughts. My opinion is not like your opinion. My opinion doesn't change, because the weather changes. I used to know this guy, and he came to my office. He was my neighbor on Wall Street over there. And one day he says, can I come by your office? I said, okay, sure. He goes, I need some guidance, advice, so on and so forth. I said, okay, sure, no, come by. And he sits in my office, and I see this guy, looks like he's Tisha B'Av. He's like down and upset. I said, what's the matter with you? He goes, oh, no, it's okay. I said, no, what's wrong? He goes, no, I get the winter blues. That's what he tells me. I get the winter blues. At that moment, this is almost 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, I didn't know what winter blues are. I never heard of such a thing. So I said, what's the winter blues? He goes, when the weather changes, I get depressed. I don't think I ever felt so sorry for a person until I saw this. You get depressed because the weather changed? You're going to be depressed every day for the rest of your life. I can tell you the future like a prophet. Every spring, you'll be cheerful. Every fall, you'll be depressed. Who wants to live like a life? Why? Because people don't have a connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. People have a connection to themselves and to their own opinion. And that creates a lot of confusion in their mind of what's the point of life, where am I going, why am I here? So the goal is to find out really what's God's opinion about you, what's God's opinion about what you're supposed to do, what happens if you do it and you listen to God, what happens if you don't do it and you don't listen to God? What does he think about people that don't listen to him? What does he do to people that don't listen to him? And quite in the opposite also. What does he do to people that do listen to him? Now the key, Rabotai, is for you to ask questions that actually matter to you. Don't try to stump me just because you're having a ball. You want to do it, you're wasting your time. Number one, most likely I'll know the answer. Number two, you're not going to get anything out of it. So you're going to ask me 5 questions and you're not going to get anything out of it. What's the point? But if you ask me 5 questions that you actually care about, if I know it, it's actually to your benefit. It's to your benefit, because now you have an answer that will give you another piece of foundation of your connection to Hashem that maybe will influence you to change the direction that you have in your life, perhaps to a better direction than the people that you know have. I asked a lot of questions in my life, and Baruch Hashem, I tried very hard to find the answer for every single one of them. And I can tell you from experience that if you're very serious about asking questions, and even more serious about what to do with the answers, your life is going to be a joy. Because the actual feeling of getting answers to questions you care about is a high. It's a high greater than any drug can give you. It's a high greater than any type of pleasure in the world can give you, only if you care about the answer. Why? Because if you ask a question where the answer matters to you, that means that once you have that answer, and the answer agrees, you agree with this answer, it agrees with your neshama, that means you now have a substantial reason to take action. You now have authorization to do something. But if you're going to ask me questions that you really don't care about, you're just interested, just curious, okay, that may be interesting, that may be intellectually stimulating for a little bit, but if it doesn't influence your life, if it doesn't lead to some type of action, then really all you'll be doing is just grinding water. You ever hear the term grinding water? Some of you are young, you probably never heard it. Well, grinding water is like a joke, because no matter how much you grind water, it stays water. So, I please ask you guys to ask serious questions that you care about. It doesn't matter what the question is. Whether it's where is there dinosaurs in the Torah, to how do we know how many stars are in the sky, to is there a proof that kosher slaughter is better than, let's say, shooting an animal in the head, to whatever you want to ask. To is there proof in the Torah that someone that violates Shabbat is considered the enemy of God, or the opposite? Do I really need to keep Shabbat? Is there a proof in the Torah that I have to keep Shabbat? And so on and so forth. What happens if somebody wears tzitzit? What happens if he decides not to wear tzitzit? What does God think about that? And so on and so forth. Is homosexuality allowed? Is there a leniency if you feel inside you were born that way? Whatever, I'm just coming up off the top of my head, questions that other people have asked me in the past. If those are questions that you have, ask them. But please ask questions you care about. And the reason why is because my goal here is to give you the answers and then hopefully get you closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Closer to start taking some more actions in your life, to do something about it, to act more like a Jew and less like a Goy. I acted like a Goy for most of my life. Only problem is I didn't think I was looking like a Goy. I didn't think I was acting like a Goy until I identified what is a Jew supposed to be like. Most of us don't know the difference between Goyim and Jews because we act like them, we dress like them, we talk like them, we speak like them, we eat like them, we date like them. What's the difference? He's a human being, I'm a human being. Some Goyim are actually even nicer than some Jews. So why should we distinguish? Well, Hashem says you're supposed to be a light to the nations, not like the nations. A light to the nations meaning you're supposed to be above and beyond them, better than them, set an example. But if you look like them, act like them, think like them, then how can you be a light at the same time? So, I did not know that Jews are supposed to act, feel, and think differently than Goyim. Until I started learning how a Jew is supposed to think. How is a Jew supposed to act? How is a Jew supposed to think and eat and breathe and even procreate? So, if you ask those questions, I think you'll get a lot out of this. We can go on for as many hours as you want. You go for 1 hour, you go for 5 hours, go for 100 hours. Don't feel like you have an obligation to run away after an hour. You could stay here for 10 hours and we'll keep asking questions until one of us collapses or Mashiach comes, whichever one happens first. So, without further ado, who wants to go first? You guys, I hear your questions all the time. I don't want your questions. New guys. I hear your questions already 87 times a day. With all due respect, I love you, but I want the new people's questions. Go ahead, guys. Nobody? Everybody's on mute? Okay, remote control. Sonny? Nothing? Guys in the back with the juice? Yesterday there was 8 questions that people raised their hand while I was talking, but no, I couldn't answer them because I was in the middle of saying a point. Now today we're on mute. Okay. Chavod, no? So you guys.
Yeah. Were dinosaurs killed in the flood? Or they
Yes.
So that the dinosaurs actually existed during the time of Noah?
Yes. It says in the Torah. It says in the Torah, Parashat Bereshit. Parashat Bereshit, on the 4th day, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created all types of creations. And it says, ויברא אלוהים את התנינים הגדולים ואת כל הנפש החיה הרומסת אשר שרצו המים למיניהם ואת כל עוף כנף למיניהו וירא אלוהים כי טוב. So in Parashat Bereshit, the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse number 21, it says, and God created the great sea giants and every living being that creeps it, with which the waters teemed after their kind, and all winged fowl of every kind, and God saw that it was good. Now, the English translation of sea giants is an improper translation, but they're translating it the way Americans understand it. But Sfat HaKodesh, the holy language, is very, very different than English. First of all, we don't have a vowel system like English. In English, the vowel system is 5 letters, A, E, I, O, U. A vowel is a foundational letter that has to be in every word. Every word in the English language must possess one of these letters, either A, E, I, or U. In Hebrew, we don't have such a thing. We don't have letters that are vowels. In Hebrew, we have something called nikud. Nikud is those dots that you see sometimes under the, or on top of the words. So Hebrew is a very, very different language. The second thing is, in English, you have something called synonyms. Synonyms are words that mean the same thing. So you have 2 words that mean the same thing, 3 words that mean the same thing. So for example, if you type up a paper for school and you want to look smart, so what do? You take one of your simple words, you highlight it, you press the right key, and then you go to thesaurus. And it gives you, or you go to synonyms, and it gives you 8 or 9 different words that mean the same thing, but they're like 8 letters or 9 letters, so it makes you look smart. Because now instead of writing a 4-letter word, you wrote an 8-letter word. So your teacher actually thinks you're smart, but it's not really you, it's Microsoft Word that's smart. That's what a lot of authors do to make themselves look smart. They don't actually know what these words mean. In Hebrew, we don't have synonyms. There's no such thing as synonyms. In Hebrew, every single word in the Hebrew language has a different meaning. Even if it's similar to another word, it has a different meaning. So, for example, the word re'eh and the word mabit. Re'eh is to see, and mabit is to stare. But in English language, you would say both of them as see, or he saw. But there's a significant difference between the two. What's the difference? Re'eh means that he looked at it in a favorable way. Mabit is an unfavorable way, meaning he's rebuking it. He doesn't like it. He hates it. There's something wrong with what I see here. Just simply by that word. Bless you. So, the pasuk here says that Hashem created the taninim agdolim. Taninim agdolim literally means, tanin means reptile. Gdolim means giant. So, it means literally giant reptiles, which is dinosaurs. Next question. Still on mute. So, dinosaurs continued existing for some time. We continued until Parashat Noach. At the generation of Noach, 99% of all the... I'll answer your question in a second. I'll finish the point. 99% of all dinosaurs died with the exception of one dinosaur. One dinosaur called the Re'em. And the Re'em was a huge animal similar to a combination of a bull and a deer, just really, really big, and lived all the way until the time of David HaMelech, King David, about 3,000 years ago. When he was a teenager, he was a shepherd. And if you read in Tehillim, you read about David HaMelech, you see that one time he talks about how he's with his sheep and he's on top of a mountain, but the mountain starts shaking. Why does the mountain start shaking? Because he didn't realize that it wasn't a mountain. It was actually a re'em. It was that big. That him and his sheep went on top of this mountain, but then the mountain started moving, and he realized that he's actually with his sheep on top of a mountain. That was about 3,000 years ago. So Unlike scientists that believe that dinosaurs have been extinct for 15 million years or 15 billion years or whatever number they come up with every week, Torah says that not only do they exist, but they actually even existed 3,000 years ago, according to our Torah. So you have a question in the back, please.
Yeah, big reptiles could be like crocodiles, alligators.
It can mean, well, crocodile is a reptile, but it's not saying big reptile. It says giant. Giant in comparison to you. If you're comparing everything to you, then everything is giant. You look at a bear, it's giant next to you. If you look at a lion, it's giant next to you. You look at a elephant, it's giant next to you. But there's another pasuk that follows it that talks about how Hashem created the other animals that that swam in the ocean. Here we go. It says so. So, the pasuk before it. It says, "Vayomer Elohim yishretzu hamayim sheretz nefesh chaya ve'ofi ofef." So Hashem created a separate being. Let the waters teem with teeming living creatures and fowl that fly above it. So all of the creatures that live in the ocean, whether it's fish or it's dolphin or it's crocodiles or frogs or so on, was created in the previous pasuk. This specific creation of Taninim Agdolim was a different creation the following day.
Yeah, but you say relative to me. I mean, I'm pretty average size. Like.
Average size in today's world, but people in the previous generation were much bigger than you. Now, if you compare yourself to some of my old clients, you would be like a midget. Why? Because I had clients that were football players, and the smallest client that I have was almost 7 feet tall. So next to him, you look like a midget.
Those are average size people.
In today's world, you may think that they're not considered average-sized people, but again, you're assuming that the world is as you see it, meaning that everything that you see is what always was here. Now, the Gemara says that the Levi tribe in our Torah, each one of them was at least 10 amot. 20 amot. 20 amot. 10 amot. 10 amot means 20 feet tall. Each one of the Leviim was 20 feet tall. Why? Because they had to carry the Aron HaKodesh. And the Aron HaKodesh from bottom to top was 10 amot. So in order for them to carry it without it hitting the floor, because if it hits the floor, they all die, they had to be at least as tall as the actual Aron HaKodesh. Why? Because the sticks that actually were holding the Aron HaKodesh weren't on the bottom. They were in the middle. So at the very least, it would have to be, the Aron HaKodesh would have to be half their size. And therefore, the Gemara says that they had to be at least 10 feet. For example, Moshe Rabbeinu was also 20 amot. Oh, it's 10 amot. 10 amot. 10 amot is about 20 feet tall, which is almost 7 meters. So people in that generation, now if I say that to you, that makes Moshe Rabbeinu sound like a giant. But Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't a giant. Why? Because there was a giant living at the time of Moshe. There was actually many giants that lived at the time of Moshe. If you look in the Torah, it says that when Am Yisrael sent spies, the Meraglim, to go look at Canaan, which became Eretz Yisrael, they came back with a bad report. Why? They said, we saw giants there that are the descendants of the Nephilim. Nephilim were also giants that lived at the time of Noach. These giants, these Anakim, were their grandkids. He says, we saw them, and it says a pasuk in the Torah, we were like grasshoppers in their eye. Meaning they were so big, we were like small like grasshoppers next to them. Now one of those giants was named Og Melech HaBashan. Og, the king of Bashan. And Og was the nemesis of Moshe Rabbeinu. And he tried to kill Moshe Rabbeinu. And you'll see in Sefer Dvarim, in the book of Deuteronomy, there's a war between Og and all of Am Yisrael. Og tries to kill him, but Moshe Rabbeinu himself kills Og. How? The Gemara and the Pasuk in the Torah talks about it, says that Moshe Rabbeinu talks to Hashem. Hashem says, don't be scared of him. He'll be in your hand just like the other giants have been in your hands. I'll kill him just like I killed all the other ones. Just go fight him like you fight anybody else. Now Moshe, that comparison to you and me, was a giant, wasn't a giant next to Og. Why? Because it says that his bed, Og's bed, was the equivalent of 9 people. 9 people that were 20 feet tall. That was just his bed. And when Moshe Rabbeinu jumped, that was the biggest bed they could find, but it still didn't fit him. Why? Because when Moshe Rabbeinu went and fought him, he took his staff, he jumped. He was 10 amot, so 20 feet tall. Moshe was a strong person. He was able to jump 20 feet in the air, and his staff was 20 feet. So you do the calculation, 60 feet. 60 feet. He's 20 feet, he jumped 20 feet, and the top of the staff is 20 feet. It says in the top of the staff, where did it reach? It reached the bone of the foot of Og. But that was enough effort for Moshe Rabbeinu, for Hashem to make Og fall and die. Og was holding up a mountain, and the mountain fell on top of him and killed him. Now, this is very, very mystical in comparison to your day-to-day life, where you're used to Facebook, and you're used to the store that you downstairs, and you're used to cars, and iPhones, and all that stuff. This sounds like a fairy tale. But these are all things that are literally written in the Torah. It's not like some people believe this. This is what it says in our Torah. When I first heard this story, I said, show me this. Why? It doesn't make any sense. Because I was used to the same world you're used to. I was used to a word that if I see it, it exists. If I don't see it, it doesn't exist. And that's the problem. I never saw anything in the Torah. I never actually studied the Torah. So once my rabbi actually started showing me the verses in the Torah, I started seeing, wow, this is actually written in the Torah. So if it's written in the Torah, and I believe in the Torah, I have to believe this. It's not like optional to believe this. You have to believe it, because that's what it says. So anytime that I mention something that's in the Torah, notice that I'll try my best to always mention a source, meaning which book in the Torah it's mentioned, or which, whether it's written Torah or oral Torah. Anytime I say, for example, Gemara, that means the oral Torah. Oral Torah is the oral tradition that we also got at Mount Sinai, that was delivered for generations orally, but then was officially written down. And today we call it the Talmud, or the Gemara. Now the Gemara, anytime that I mention something to you guys as the Gemara, Masechet, such and such, Brachot, that means that it's a tractate of the Gemara, and I'm not mentioning you the whole Gemara. All I'm mentioning to you is one little line, one sentence, out of this whole Gemara. Now this is just one book of the Gemara. This particular edition of Art Scroll has 73 of them. So what I'm mentioning to you with all of this, let's say 5-10 minutes of what I've just been talking straight, that's one line. Maybe 1.5 lines in this book out of 73 books. So if this 5 minutes, 10 minutes I just explained to you is one line, imagine what the other 73 books are. And those 73 books are not even 1% of the actual Torah. Because the Torah is extraordinary. Point is that once we start looking at the things that are inside the Torah, you'll find out 2 things. One, you'll find out that the world is drastically bigger than you can imagine. Much, much bigger. The second thing that you'll realize is that it's a very, very different world. It has been a different world, and it will be a different world than you can imagine, because we're limited with our understanding. And if you start looking at the Torah, the final conclusion you'll get is that the Torah is always right. We are never right and the Torah is wrong. It'll never happen. You'll always, if you dig deep enough, you'll always get to a final conclusion that the Torah is always right, whether it's scientifically, medically, logically, rationally, and so on. I'll give you an example. How many of you know, did I tell you guys, maybe I told you this last week, how many stars are in the sky? Did I tell you guys this?
5 billion.
Huh?
5 billion.
5 billion. Okay, what else? Who else another wants to throw in the air? Billions. So in 1996, NASA, you guys heard of NASA?
Yes.
Not you, them. The ones that are looking at me funny. Okay, so NASA, you heard of NASA, right? Okay, 1996, NASA connected to a supercomputer which in essence wanted to estimate how many stars are in the universe. Supercomputer is a high-functioning computer, more than your traditional computer. They estimated that the amount of stars that are in the heavens, that are in the universe, are 10 to the 20th power. You with me? I'm talking to myself. I already know this, so if you guys know it, then I'll just say something else. Okay, next question. Go ahead.
This is off topic.
There's no topic. Go ahead, questions.
What is there like a penalty to smoking?
There's a mitzvah in the Torah that says, "Shmartem et nafshotechem." You're obligated to protect your own body. So you're not allowed to do things that damage your body. And therefore, you're not allowed to smoke. Now, if somebody already became addicted to cigarettes because they have nicotine and they're addictive, there are leniencies for people that smoke cigarettes where it's never allowed, but it's not considered as much of a sin as if somebody that wasn't a smoker knew it's not allowed to smoke and decided to smoke anyway. So if you're already a smoker and you're already addicted to it, the best suggestion is to try to quit, try your best to quit. I was a smoker for 20 years. It's not easy to quit, but if you want it bad enough, you'll quit. I promise you, it's not as hard as you think, and more importantly, you'll benefit greatly out of it, monetarily, health-wise, and many other ways. And quite frankly, once you stop smoking, you discover that it's a very disgusting habit. Because in essence, what you do to yourself every time you smoke a cigarette is you confirm that you're going to be the smelliest guy in the room. So your wife is going to constantly say that you smell disgusting. Your friends, if they're not smokers, are going to tell you smell disgusting. If you have customers, they're not going to want to do business with you because you smell disgusting. And quite frankly, that's not a good. It's not a good look. Not a good look for anybody. But if you're already addicted, then you have a leniency that it's not as grave of a sin, but you should quit because it is bad for you. As far as other things, for example, drugs, whether it's marijuana, ecstasy, cocaine, heroin, and all the other garbage that's in the world, that's never allowed under any condition, unless it's for health reasons, which is only, at this point at least, only one of those drugs I mentioned, marijuana, is used for health reasons. But even those people that have like cancer or any type of disease that traditional painkillers don't work for them and they need to use marijuana, they don't have to smoke marijuana. They could just take CBD, which is a way for them to get the drug but without getting the high. The reason why the high is the problem is because you're not allowed as a Jew to be in an altered state of mind on purpose. You're not allowed to alter your state of mind on purpose because you have to be always prepared to talk to your God. Now, if a king came in front of you, you're not going to smoke pot right before you met him. At least if you're smart, you won't. If, let's say, President of the United States showed up instead of me, most of you guys wouldn't play with your phones. Most of you guys wouldn't, waste your time. All of you guys will dress up, maybe even change your shirt, maybe even look appropriate, use a big word once in a while. Why? Because the president is here. Now, unfortunately, you're stuck with me, but the reality is that you know who you're dealing with once you have a president in front of you. Now, it's much more significant if you know that God is in front of you. And if God is in front of you, then of course you cannot be in an altered state of mind. You can't be drunk, you can't be high, and so on. But like I said, the exception for people that use marijuana or is CBD, which is for medical reasons only. Not medical reasons like they're bored. Medical reasons like they have serious pain and they need it for it. Next question. Go ahead.
So why would God make it like the THC part if you're not allowed to like
Well, God created everything. He created good and he created bad. He created a gun. Now that gun, you could use it for protection, you could use it to hunt, or you could use it to kill somebody. He created a knife. That knife, you could use it to cut food, you could cut it to kill somebody, you could use it to slaughter an animal, you could use it for a lot of different reasons. So everything that Hashem created, He created in a way that allows you to practice your free choice to do what you want with it. To do what you want with it. And THC and all of the other things that are in different drugs can be used for other reasons other than just getting high. You can use it for medicinal reasons. You can use it for many, many other things. It's not just for that. That's what people use it for, but many other doctors and biologists and chemists and so on use these things for different reasons. It's not just for that. That's not its sole purpose in the world. Yes?
What about tobacco? What do you use tobacco for? It's good.
Tobacco, until about 150 years ago, was a fantastic product for paper. They make paper out of it. You also use tobacco for food. You also use tobacco for different products that you need in your house. There's many, many things that you can use tobacco for. It's not just cigarettes. Tobacco is a very cash-rich crop. So people that grow tobacco know what they're doing because you can use it for a lot of different things. There's some cookies that have tobacco in them. Yes.
So going back pretty much on what you said in regards to marijuana,
Ken.
at the end of the day, I understand it's not comparable to like a cigarette, but if we see now, there are many Rebbeim, there are many, like, I wouldn't say Gadolim, but we do see that many of them do smoke tobacco. Now, however, there's not a good side to it, and it's harm. And it's totally Isser, 100%. We made it halachically, technically allowed because Roiv is doing it. However, the same thing could go with marijuana. Yeah, it's bad for you if you're not doing it specifically for medicinal use or whatever the case is.
So what's the question?
So the question is, how come people can't smoke that and also make that consider like it's bad for you and make it immune for everyone else, just like cigarettes are, including rabbis smoking cigarettes as well.
So it's two-part question. Okay. So first off, we have to understand that if we're going to learn, we don't learn from your local rabbi. We don't learn from your average Joe. Even if your average Joe has a unique hormone system that allows him to grow a beard that's from here to the end of the room. That doesn't make anybody righteous. We learn from the Torah and our sages. Now, sages in this generation, previous generation, and so on, were called the Gdolim, like he called them. The Gdolei Ador. If you see the Gdolei Ador do something, that's something that you have a question about. If it's good, if it's bad, that's something you... But if you see an average Joe, even if that average Joe is a very nice guy, very learned, even knows a lot of Gemara by heart, we don't learn from him. Why? Because he is not the example that represents Judaism. He's not Da'at Torah. He's a person that knows some Torah, maybe even a Talmid Chacham. But until it's conclusive that he's considered a Gadol, a giant among the generation, he's not the example that we make psak based off of. That's one. Second thing is, as I mentioned before, well, actually last week, we don't learn from people. We learn from books. So, for example, many women that heard my shiurim about wigs and how we proved conclusively that if you're wearing a wig today, you are practicing avodah zarah. You're benefiting from idolatry because over 90% of the wigs, real hair wigs that are in the world today, come from idolatry of India. Now, many of the women that listened to it, Baruch Hashem, many of them took off the wig, and Baruch Hashem, they now have a kosher kisui rosh, of a mitpachat or a hat, something like that. But some that like their wigs more than they like God, they started creating excuses of why they're doing this and they do that, and so on and so forth. One of the most common excuses that women use, and sometimes their husbands, sometimes actually the husbands are worse than the wives. Actually, believe it or not, not sometimes, all the time, the husbands are worse than the wives. They come back to me and say, no, you must be wrong. Why? Because my Rebbe, my rabbi, his wife wears a wig. The rabbi's wife, and the rabbi's Talmid Chacham, the rabbi's tzaddik, the rabbi's great, the rabbi's this, or there was some big rabbi from the previous generation, and his wife wore a wig. So what, you're saying they're all idol worshippers? I'm not saying they're idol worshippers. I'm saying that, first of all, that they're benefiting from idolatry. It's something completely different. Second thing is you have to look at the Gemara in Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi talks about how do we learn? How do we learn? One of the people says, look, the rabbi's wife is doing such and such. Gemara says, you don't learn from the rabbi's wife. You learn from what's written in a book. If it's written in a book, you learn from the book. You don't learn from what? Why? Because she has a yetzara. She has an evil inclination. So yes, she may be righteous everywhere else, but this, she's falling for it. Same thing with people. You see that the rabbi knows a lot of Torah, he does a lot of mitzvot, he does a lot of chesed, but he's doing something wrong. I don't know, maybe he decided to shake a woman's hand that technically is inappropriate for a Jew. He decided that he wants to go have a drink with a couple of his students at a bar, even though there's women there. Okay, that doesn't make him the worst person on earth. It's a sin nonetheless, but you're not going to say, oh, I saw my rabbi at a casino, and therefore I'm allowed. No one's gonna rationalize this. Third point and final is what I mentioned today, which is that again, there's a significant difference between marijuana and tobacco. The difference is that although tobacco is drastically worse for you, health-wise, drastically worse because of all the poison that they put in it, it does not alter your state of mind to the same extent that marijuana does. And that's the biggest isul, that's the biggest sin when it comes to marijuana. It's not that God cares less whether you smoke something or not, whether it's tobacco or it's plastic or you decide to take the glass and make it into a cigarette. No one cares. It's that you're not allowed as a Jew to ever alter your state of mind because you are obligated from the 10 commandments, the first commandments, Ani Hashem Elokechem, I'm God that took you out of Egypt. You are obligated as a Jew to always be prepared to meet your Maker, to talk to your Maker, to talk to Hashem. You cannot talk to Hashem drunk. You cannot talk to Hashem high. And that's why Arav Moshe Feinstein, Psak La'alacha, almost 60 years ago, that anyone that alters their state of mind intentionally by the use of marijuana is considered a ben sorer umoreh, which in Hebrew, in English means a wayward child, which we would give him a death penalty. That was what the Gadol said. What any rabbi in the world today says is irrelevant. Why? No one can compare to the shoes, not the whole person, the shoes of Rav Moshe Feinstein. No one. So we go by previous generation rabbis. That's what they says. Finished. Arguments over. Now you can go to your local Chabad or Breslev or Orthodox or Modern Orthodox or Reform Orthodox or Veshmor, whatever they call it today. All the different things in the world. And I'm sure you'll find some guy that calls himself a rabbi and says, no, this guy's crazy. He thinks he's Pinchas. He thinks this, he thinks that. No, come. Well, give me a drag. I'll smoke with you. You know who says this, right? Dror Kasuto calls himself a rabbi. Rav Dror. Famous speaker on YouTube. He goes to different people's houses and tells them all types of sins to do. He tells people, what? Smoking marijuana, it helps you study Torah, mitzvah. If it helps you study Torah, mitzvah. Not only tells people to smoke marijuana, he tells you to smoke before you study Torah. Your wife doesn't want to go to the mikveh, it's okay, you can be with her anyway. Your wife doesn't feel like going to Shabbat, she wants to go to the beach instead, give her a ride. That's what he tells her, but he calls himself Orthodox. So you want to listen to those people? Enjoy. He has Gehinom, and you'll have it also. You want to listen to what the books say? You want to listen to what the Gadolei Ador say? It's a different story. And that's what we always have to verify. You have to verify, where does it say this? Why does it say it? How do they arrive at this conclusion? And you'll see that the Torah makes all the sense in the world if you're looking for the truth. But if you're looking for an excuse to justify your actions, I promise you, with 100% guarantee or your money back, you will find somebody on YouTube to justify whatever evil you want to do. You want to murder 6 million people? I'll give you a documentary that will convince you it's a mitzvah. I'll give you a documentary right now that will convince you, by the time you finish the documentary, you'll be convinced it's a mitzvah to kill 6 million people. Why? It's a documentary about Hitler's life. I watched it. If I wasn't a Jew that follows mitzvot, I'm telling you, I'd probably become a Nazi. I watched it, I'm telling you. That's serious. You start looking at his life. You see what he did. You see what he says. He's so passionate. So exciting. Wow! At the end of the documentary, it's 3 hours. I mean, it took me many, many months to watch this whole thing, because I can't watch the whole thing. You go crazy. But anyway, after a while, you finish this whole thing. It's like you sympathize. It's like, maybe he's right. And it's like, what are you talking about? You start looking, you're starting to say, wait, who said that? You think Hitler's in a room? You start saying, maybe he was right. Maybe he did. Why? Because you watch so much propaganda garbage that it infiltrated into your mind. Next thing you know, you're convinced. This is what happens today. Why do you think kids, once a week, on the average right now in America, it's 1.2 times a week. Meaning it's more than once per week, there's a school shooting. How come this doesn't happen in any other country? No other country in the world has this statistic. No other country in the world has a statistic of 1.2 people going to a school and shooting people. Why is the Western, the sophisticated, the rich world, Why do they kill a bunch of people? Why are teenagers losing their mind, going to school, start shooting a bunch of innocent people? Why? I have a hunch. It's called video games. Second hunch, movies. Third hunch, the type of environment they live in. You combine all of those three, by the time a kid is 13, 14 years old, he's probably murdered about 2 to 3 million people on a screen. He's become desensitized to human life because of so much blood that he saw on the screen that he thinks it's a video game. And that's what the shooting was. I think it was in Australia or some other country a few months ago. He actually videotaped the whole thing, making sure that his camera was positioned like you would see it on a video game. And he actually put the whole thing on Facebook. And I don't know, I think he killed maybe 50, 60 people, something like that. 6 people. Why? You see, it's for video games. Point being, Abotai, is that if you put enough junk into your head, eventually you will turn into junk. If you put Kedusha into your head, you put good things into your head, eventually you'll turn into good. Kedoshim to you, ki kadosh ani. You be holy because I am holy. How can you become holy? Start with allowing only good things to enter your mind. Stop the junk. This takes a little bit of training, a little bit of willpower, but I promise you, it's for your own good. Next question. Yes? No? Go ahead.
Let's say that you have a situation with a Jew, right? And you want to, well, it's not like you want to, but it gets to a point where you have a certain threshold, or he's breaking property, or he's doing something. What do you do?
You have to explain yourself. What do you want to beat him up?
No, let's say that there's somebody that has something, that knows somebody that has his mother passed away, and he's a, how do you say that?
Orphan?
Orphan, yeah, he's an orphan.
Yeah.
Okay, so you feel bad for the guy, you want to help him out, right? But then instead of him taking the finger that you gave him, he like grabs your hand and tries to pull you inside.
That makes him normal. People you give him normally, people you give him a finger, they want a hand. But that's why you have to select who you help very carefully. You're not allowed to ruin yourself in order to save somebody else, because then in the end both of you will be ruined. So you have to make sure that you calculate things properly. If there's a specific situation where you see that somebody is taking advantage of you, then obviously you don't allow him to do it. You remove yourself from the situation, even if the person is annoying and a person... No, you don't need to do physically. You just simply ignore the person. He calls you, don't pick up. If he comes to you, say hello and leave.
Let's say he's not staying in your house, but he's inside a house that's rented by somebody else, and you have to like. So it's like there's a whole.
You have to see him. You have to see him.
Not only have to see him, I can't tell him not to go if it's not my house. But it says that he wants to rent an apartment from me.
Well, does he live in your house?
No.
Okay, Baruch Hashem. That's
Oh,
already.
No, but yes, last night he banged on my door. I gave him all his stuff back, and then he comes back and he literally broke the door and he put his stuff back inside without us having it all on film. But regardless of that, because of this, it was something that I was thinking about calling the cops. But this guy, the homeowner, told me next time it happens to call the police. So I'm asking you, what do you think I should do? Do you think I should call the police, or do you think I should?
No, you don't want to call the police on another Jew unless you are seriously in danger, because then you will be reporting to the government, which would put you in a status of losing your olam haba. You're not allowed to go tell the government about other Jews unless you are in danger. If you're simply being annoyed, that's not danger. That's just annoying. Harassed is annoyed. It's just a different word of using. It's synonym. Harassed, annoyed, it's just annoying. And now, so what do you do? You simply give this person his stuff. You say, listen, I'm not interested in having a relationship with you anymore. The end. He calls you, you don't pick up. He knocks on the door. You don't open the door. You see him in the street, you say hello, and you move on. Just as if there was somebody else. That's it.
Like, how do I do it? Like, okay, but that's the thing. This is one guy. You know how much people are like?
There's 8 billion. Yeah, I know. I've been in the world for a while.
Sorry, so yeah, so like.
Yes. There's a lot of annoying people. Quite frankly, most people are annoying to some extent or another. Some people are users. Some people are losers. Some people are in between. You have to choose your friends carefully. There was a person father that came to his son. He said, son, how many friends do you have? And the son said, Abba, I'm proud to say I have 300 friends.
No friends. I'm happy. I don't want.
You want the story, or you want to tell me how many friends you have? He says, Abba, I have 300 friends. And he says, his father says, son, I've been in the world for long enough to know that you don't even have one friend. He goes, no, Abba, I'm the most popular kid in school. I have 300 friends. Every time I throw a party, 300 people show up. Every time I make a WhatsApp message, 300 people want to join. I have 300 friends, Abba. I can show you on my phone. iPhone 8, 9, 10, 15, whatever it is. I have it. Abba, proof. Abba says, you don't even have one. You want proof? Son says yes. He goes, okay, fine. I'll teach you something, son. Go get a nice, juicy lamb. Get the butcher to slaughter it for you and put it in a garbage bag. After that, go to your friends one after another. Now you have 300 friends. It's going to take too long. Who are your top 30 friends? Can you think of them? He goes, yeah, they were my favorites. I picked them favorites on my phone. Okay, go to your favorites on your iPhone, your top 30, and show up to your house 12 o'clock at night. As soon as they open the door, show them the blood coming out of the bag. Don't show them it's a lamb. Tell them, listen, I just killed somebody by accident. Help me out. And you'll learn something. That's what the kid did. Knocked on the door, 12 o'clock at night. They see blood, they shut the door. They see I killed somebody, they shut the door. Nobody's answering. Nobody wants to talk to him. Yeah, but we were boys. We smoked a little. We dated a little. We did a little. We did a little. All that stuff. Listen, all that stuff was fun. I'm not interested in being friends with a murderer. Not interested in going to jail for you. I'm not going to jail for you. I liked you until today. He comes back at the end of the night. He says, Abba, I don't even have one friend. How many friends do you have, Abba? He says, I have a half a friend. And you're going to go meet him now. Go to his house. Now it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Go to his house with the same thing. He goes to his house, knocks on the door, tells the guy, listen, I killed somebody. Help me out. He shows him the blood, everything. Guy says, come in. Come in, kid. Covers him, says, okay, listen, I'll call your father, sit down. We'll figure something out. We'll figure something out. Don't worry. It's going to be okay. He tells him the story. Oh, okay, your father's a clever guy. So he says to his father, you have such an amazing friend. I want to be friends with him. But how come he's only half a friend? How come he's not a full friend? A guy like that, I should count as 5 friends. He says, because he's a half a friend, because what happened over there didn't really have anything to do with him. It's not like you killed somebody that he's... what did he do? He helped you out to get away, but to go away. But if it has something to do with him, meaning you took his money, you stole from him, it affected him directly, then you'll see he's still only half a friend. He's not a full friend. Why? That's how people are. Once you touch their pocket, they're not only not a half a friend, they're nothing. Once you touch their convenience, they're not only not a half a friend, they're 0. And that's the reality. The older you get, the more you realize that if you have one friend that's a real friend, you're a very lucky person. Choose your friends wisely. I know you're all very young and you're all still under the impression that all of you are going to be friends forever. I promise you, you won't. And it's not something that a curse. It's just reality. You grow up. You all go to different directions. You marry that one. You marry that one. You go to this state. You go to that state. You have different interests. You have different careers. Life changes. When I was 15, 18, 19 years old, I was sure that my friends from high school were BFFs. We're going to be friends forever. My friends from football, I was in football team back then. We cried every season together. We celebrated. We bled together. We're like, yeah, we're boys. We're boys. Guess what? 20-year reunion? I didn't even go. Why? It's a waste of time. It's a waste of time. For what? To see a bunch of kids that I was friends with 20 years ago? For what? What are we going to talk about? They don't have common interest. You grow up. Your life moves on. This doesn't mean that the friendship is not valuable. But don't build your life based on friendships. You want a friend? Get a book. Learn something. If you learn something valuable, that will be your friend. Why? Because that value will stay with you forever. A person, maybe yes, maybe no. But if you're very lucky, you'll have 1, maybe 2 your entire life that are real friends. Ask any old man. They'll tell you the same thing. Next question. No, next somebody else. You're hogging the questions. No, there's 30 of you. Somebody has to have a question. You guys don't know it. You guys know everything already by now? I didn't know anything when I was 18. No? Huh? Anything you want.
I know when my friend told me about this place, he said you should ask a question that you can't get. I don't understand.
How about...
I know there's something about
Yes.
that is unexplainable. Even like
Shlomo Melech. Yes. What's the unexplainable?
Yeah.
So there is a handful of things in the Torah that there is no rational reason for them. Now, Torah says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world with one main thing in mind. Gemara Masechet Shabbat says that why did he create the world? He created the world in order for you to fear him. That's why he created the world. That's his main reason. Now there are other reasons, there are other things, but he says he created the world, so he's the king and you're the servant. That's why he created the world. How do you define who's king, who's servant? Who's afraid of who? If the king is afraid, he's not the king. If the servant is afraid, he's a good servant. So now, all of the mitzvot that we have in the Torah, there is only one reason, real reason, that we know for sure without a shadow of a doubt, that obligates each one of us to do it. Why? What's the reason? You have to, because God said so. That's the reason. All the mitzvot, whether it's kashrut, nida, tarat mishpacha, the Shabbat, anything else, any mitzvah you could pick, red cow, anything. Why do we do it? Because God said so. And we are afraid of him. Why? He's mighty, he's huge, he's endless, and so on and so forth. You read in, for example, Shema Yisrael. All of you know what Shema Yisrael is, I'm assuming? Shema Yisrael? Okay, Shema Yisrael. Any of you ever spent time actually learning Shema Yisrael? When you read Shema Yisrael, in the beginning it sounds really nice. You should love your God with all your heart, with all your life, all your money, and you should do tefillin, and so on and so forth, and listen to God. But then it says this, V'chara, אף אדוני בכם ועצר את השמיים ולא יהיה מטר והאדמה לא תיתן את יבולה ועבדתם מהרה מעל הארץ הטובה אשר אדוני נותן לכם ושמתם את דברי האלה על לבבכם ועל נפשכם. It says, if you don't do what I said, then I will blaze, my anger will blaze on top of you. I will restrain the heavens. There's not going to be any rain, meaning that there's going to be drought. And then there's going to be famine. And you're all going to die. And how much suffering people will have. To the extent that the Torah says in Parashat Bechukotai, and Kitavo, that the hunger will get to such a level that you will eat your own children because of the starvation. Now anyone that thinks that this is just a pasuk to scare you should look in history. It's happened multiple times. Destruction of the first Bet HaMikdash, destruction of the second Bet HaMikdash. You look at the book of Eicha, Lamentations, it literally says that it happened. You look at what happened during the Holocaust even, as I told you guys last week. This has happened unfortunately many times. This punishment that we read about every day, twice a day, in Shema Yisrael happened many times. Starvation to the extent of eating our own children has happened several times throughout history, meaning that God is not joking. So rule number one in the Torah, fulfill it because God said so. That's the reason. But because God loves us and understands his creation's limits, meaning that we are limited, he knows that we desire more understanding of certain things. We desire some type of benefit for doing anything. We're not robots. We don't want to do things just because. We want something more. We want to see that there's a benefit to it. So most of the mitzvot in the Torah, we see that there are benefits from it. For example, Brit Milah. Anyone that studies circumcision will see that people that have been circumcised are much more have much more protection against STDs, sexually transmitted diseases, and other types of diseases. The actual orla, the part of the body that you cut, the part of the male member that you cut, is actually something that makes it very easy to get disease. So sexually transmitted diseases are not as common among Jews as they are among Goyim that are uncircumcised. Second thing, Shabbat. Every single professional that has worked for long enough knows that the best part of working is that you're able to afford getting a vacation. As a Jew, you don't need to afford getting a vacation. All you need is to keep Shabbat. You get a vacation once a week. And scientists and psychologists that have done studies about people that take breaks, especially people that have keep Shabbat, say that those people tend to be much more physically and psychologically healthy than the people that do not take a break from the mundane. And so on and so forth. Kosher food, if it's kosher meat, it's much healthier than non-kosher meat. Non-kosher meat, as I told you guys last week or 2 weeks ago, has a lot of worms and maggots and disgusting things in it and disease, whereas kosher meat does not have any of that stuff. So the point is that there are certain benefits. But there are a handful of mitzvot in the Torah which we simply do not know. Who, what, when, and how, and one of them is the red heifer, the para aduma. Why? What's so difficult about it? Because the mitzvah of para aduma is irrational. Because what happens with the para aduma is they take the para aduma, the red heifer, to the Bet HaMikdash after one of the Kohanim, Gemara Masechet Yoma talks about it. One of the Kohanim slaughters the cow. They burn the cow. They take the ashes. They mix it with the holy water from the Kiyol, the same water that the Kohanim would wash their hands and feet. They also include some specific incense into it. And then they take this new potion, if you will, and they sprinkle it on specific people. Which people? People that are contaminated. People that have tum'ah. Now, tum'ah in the world today is not relevant to us because we're all tameh. All of us are impure. We're either impure because we've touched a dead body, or we're impure because we touched somebody else that touched a dead body, or we're impure because we touched a specific type of dead animal, like a dead rat or things of that nature, or we're impure because we touched a nidah. Like if you've ever been intimate with a woman without being married, or you've been intimate with your wife without her going to the mikveh, you have tumat nidah. And tumat nidah is worse than tumat met. A nidah, the impurity of a nidah, is even worse than the impurity of somebody that died. It stays longer, it's much more difficult to get rid of. Point being is that this tum'ah, there's only one cure, and that cure is the potion that's made from the para aduma. There's only been 8 or 9 red heifers, red cows in history. We use them at the Bet HaMikdash, and for the last 2,000 years, we have not had a red heifer. Showing us that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is only going to create things if we need them. If we don't need them, He doesn't create them. Once we need them, He'll create them again. Keep that in mind for the final point. Now, this red heifer, the way it works, is that once they take, the Kohen takes this potion, he sprinkles it on the impure person that touched a dead body or a nidah or whatever it is. He sprinkles it on him, and that person becomes pure now. He becomes like everybody else. He's pure. He's allowed to go back to the Bet HaMikdash. He's allowed to go back to the camp. Everything is good. Fresh start. But until then, he's not allowed. Once he has impurity, he has tzarat or something else, he's not allowed to be around the camp. Not allowed to touch him and so on and so forth. Now, what's the irrational part of it? The irrational part of it is that the Kohen that's purifying all the people, he himself is pure when he starts. They are impure. But after he finishes purifying everybody, they become pure and he becomes impure. And Shlomo HaMelech says that doesn't make any sense. Why? It's not like he's contracting the impurity from them. He's not touching them. He's not touching anybody. He's just sprinkling water on them. So he says that doesn't make any sense. Why is he becoming impure and they're pure? Doesn't make any sense. So this is the part that Shlomo HaMelech says. This shows us that even if it doesn't make sense, Hashem obviously has a reason for it, and it doesn't necessarily need to make sense. Now, the final point is this. As I told you, for 2,000 years, we didn't have a Bet HaMikdash, and we also did not have a red cow either. But the Gemara in Masechet Sotah, page 49b, says that there's going to be different signs before Mashiach comes. Different things that are going to happen in the world before Mashiach comes. One of those signs is that there will be a red cow. Guess what? There's 2 red cows now. They're all born within the last couple of years. For the first time in 2,000 years, we have red cows. Which means that whether you like it or you don't like it, Mashiach's coming very soon. Why? They haven't been here for 2,000 years. You could try to breed them, not breed them, try to do whatever you want. You couldn't get them. And trust me, Am Yisrael has been trying very, very hard to get red cows. 2,000 years, failed. Because it's very specific. It has to be 100%, not even 2 black hairs on it. And it can never carry anything, and so on and so forth. A lot of specifics to make sure that this is a red cow. 2,000 years, 0. Right now we have 2. Red cows that are kosher. Right now we have 2 of them. One is in Yerushalayim, and one of them is an undisclosed location. Some people believe it's in Texas.
I have 2 questions.
Okay, let somebody else take, because you already asked one. Next question. Same price. Go ahead.
Okay, so we learned that David HaMelech was not able to build the Bet HaMikdash because he had blood on his hands.
Yeah.
Why isn't it that Moshe Rabbeinu was able to write the Torah if he also had blood on his hands?
Moshe didn't write the Torah. Hashem wrote the Torah.
Hashem wrote it, but Moshe wrote, God was dictating, and Moses wrote the right.
Right.
So Moses wrote it.
Right.
By hand.
Right.
I don't know if my question is weird or not.
It is. I'm trying to figure out what you're trying to say. Why was Moses able to write a Sefer Torah and David HaMelech was not able to build a Bet HaMikdash? Well, the Bet HaMikdash is not a book. Bet HaMikdash is a building. And Hashem did not want his building built with hands that have killed somebody. Even if you killed somebody as part of a mitzvah, he did not want it to do that. To such an extent, the specifications of building the Bet HaMikdash, the house of God, was so specific that you weren't even allowed to use steel. You weren't even allowed to use steel to build the Bet HaMikdash. You weren't even allowed to saw things in a traditional way. So that's why Shlomo Melech had to command the king of the Shedim, of the demons, and he commanded him to go find him something called a shamir worm. Because this shamir worm has radiation that was able to cut everything, including the stones. And that's why until this day, for example, if you go to the Kotel, or you go to the tunnels of the Kotel, on a tunnel of the Kotel, you're going to see there's one rock. There's one big rock that's on top of other rocks. And the archaeologists and scientists and everybody else that's been there and sees this rock says, we don't have the technology today, with all the iPhones and iPads and all the stuff that we have today, atomic bombs, everything else, he says, we don't have the technology today to make such a thing. We don't have the technology today to lift such a rock. Why? The rock is 40 feet long. It's one piece. It's on top. We have no technology in the world that could lift this rock. But somehow, Am Yisrael not only cut this rock, but actually lifted it. So the point is that the technology that we see today with the buttons and everything else, people think that makes it sophisticated, more sophisticated than the past. But if you look at the Midrashim, you look at our Torah, our oral Torah, you'll see that some of the technology that we possessed as Am Yisrael 1,500 years ago, 2,000 years ago, 2,500 years ago, and even 3,000 years ago was even more advanced than some of the things we have today. So I did a shiur called Torah and Science and Ancient Wisdom. I recommend people watch it. It talks about different knowledge that Am Yisrael had about specific things in technology, in medicine, and all other aspects of science that is far more sophisticated than what we even have today. And they had it 3,000 years ago. So as far as the building, the Bet HaMikdash itself, Hashem wanted it a specific way, and since he's the boss, he calls the shots. Hashem wanted Moshe Rabbeinu to be the one that writes the Torah. He wanted to name the Torah after Moshe Rabbeinu, and Moshe Rabbeinu did not want it. Moshe Rabbeinu, was against having a Torah named against him. He was the humblest man of all time. But the point being is that the Gemara Masechet Shabbat says that when the Satan came to Moshe Rabbeinu, he says to Moshe, "Where's the Torah?" He says, "Who am I to have a Torah? You think Hashem gave me the Torah? Who am I, Bechlal?" So Hashem says, "Moshe, what are you fibbing? You're lying, Moshe. I gave you the Torah." He says, "Hashem, the Torah is so big. There's no such thing. You gave it to me. You gave me like the essence of a Torah. It's not. I don't have the Torah. I'm just carrying it here over here." Hashem says, "Oh, you're even humble when it comes to the Torah. I'll name it after you." 5 books of Moses. You're so humble. You're not even willing to say that you even have the Torah in your hand. I'll name the Torah after you. Point being is that Hashem has His rules, He has His laws, He has His ways, and every single thing that He does, again, the main reason of why we follow it is simply because He said so. Other reasons we have, and the more you learn about some of these other reasons, the more fascinating you'll see that it is. Go ahead.
Going back to the red heifer being unexplained,
Can.
I think I can explain it.
Okay.
So it's as if he's actually passing on his purity to all of them. So if he passes on his purity, he becomes impure because he doesn't have the purity anymore. He gave it. He gave it to him.
No, but that's the thing. It's the Kohen is not passing any purity. The Kohen is just sprinkling water. It's not the Kohen per se that is doing it. It's the water that's doing it. It's the red heifer water, ashes, that are doing it. So it's irrelevant whether it's him or it's somebody else or anything else. That part, the Gemara says it's not. The reason why it's unexplainable is because the purity is not due to the person. The purity is due to the red heifer, the ashes, and what took place. So if it was, for example,
Maybe that's the only way to pass it on.
but he's not passing it on. As the Gemara says, he's not passing it on. It's in essence if this specific water is what's doing it. Why he's doing it, Hashem obviously decided why it's doing it. But as far as the person himself, his status only changes because Hashem decreed it so. There are obviously things that are beyond, but trust me when I tell you, if Shlomo HaMelech says that he couldn't figure it out, mostly, we can't either. Somebody else. It's a nice argument, though. It's a nice argument. It just disagrees with the sages. No? Same price. You guys have a question. You just shy.
My friend wanted me to ask you a question.
Oh, okay, your friend. I like your friend. No? Go ahead.
Hold on, I gotta read his text message.
Okay.
Okay, it says, what halacha do we follow that we learn from the story of the Mitzvah taking Sarah?
Of the what?
The Mitzvah taking Sarah.
Of me.
Mitzvah taking Sarah, Avram and Sarah.
Uh-huh.
So the Mitzvah took Sarah, so what halacha do we follow?
What, when they kidnapped Sarah, you mean?
Yeah. And then he said that it's his sister. So,
Oh.
he said, Avram thought they would kill him, and he told him Sarah was his wife, and therefore told him she was his sister. How was he so sure they would kill him?
So he says to Avimelech says, why did you do this to me? He says, I saw that there's no fear of God here. V'yarguni. There's no yirat shamayim here. There's no yirat elokim here. V'yarguni. There's no yirat shamayim here, and you'll kill me. So the Gemara says, why did Avraham assume that because they're not afraid of God, they'll kill him? So the Gemara says, if somebody's not afraid of God, that means he thinks he's God. Meaning, he makes the laws. And if he makes the laws, as soon as you disobey his laws, because he's God, you disobey his laws, he feels the right to kill you. And that's why the Gemara concludes, a Jew is not allowed to be inside a room that's closed with somebody that does not fear God. Why? He may kill you. So that's the first halacha we learn. Second thing we learn, midvar sheker tirchak. Dvar sheker tirchak is a mitzvah in the Torah that we say that from a thing of lies, stay away. The Torah doesn't say don't lie. It says stay away from lies. Why? Because lies, in the end, will always end up for a loss. Always end up for a loss. Either it'll show a loss that you have lack of emunah, or it'll show that you're a corrupt person, or it'll show other things that are negative. In general, a person should never lie or associate himself with a liar or a thing of lies. Like, for example, many people today in the Jewish community have associated themselves with a business that's full of lies. It's called cash lending, or what is it? Cash advance. Cash advance, if you're in that business or you know somebody in that business, you could pretty much kiss your olam haba bye. You have no share of the world to come. For sure. I'm not telling you because I don't like you, but I can tell you at least a handful of reasons why you definitely do not have a share of the world to come. Number one, a Jew is not allowed to lend another Jew money and charge him interest. Not allowed to lend another Jew money and charge him interest. If a Jew lends another Jew money and charges him interest, everybody loses their olam haba. The lender, the borrower, and the person that was involved in between. The broker. Everybody loses olam haba. Hashem says, not allowed to lend another Jew money and charge him interest. So what's the solution that the religious people did? Oh, we have a eter iska, shtar iska. What's a shtar iska? He's going to sign that I'm an investor. Yeah, but here's the thing. You can fool him, you could fool yourself, but you can't fool God. And eter iska specifically is supposed to say that it's not a loan, it's an investment. But it actually has to be an investment, not just say it's an investment. Like you could say it's Pikachu, you could say it's a parrot, you could say it's a building. But if it's really still a loan, then hey, It's a loan. How do we know it's a loan? That you have to pay it back no matter what happens. That's what makes a loan a loan. What makes something an investment? An investment is something that if you can't pay it back because you lost it, you don't have to pay it back. Why? That's an investment. You invest money. Sometimes you lose the money. It happens. That's an investment. Once you have something says, whatever it says, but in reality, it's a loan because you have to pay it back no matter what, your eteriska is toilet paper. Actually, it's worse toilet paper. At least toilet paper, you can use it for stuff. This you can't use it for. So all of these eteriska, and I was in the business world for almost 20 years. I know a lot about this stuff. So it's not I don't have anything against these businesses. It's just a reality. Eteriska that people sign is complete garbage. That's number reason one. Second reason. Reason number 3. In the last 6 years since I left the financial industry, the industry of lending found an old law that is literally something that can lead to the next Holocaust. Now, you're going to call me extreme, you're going to call me crazy, but if you pay attention, you'll see exactly why. There is an old law in America called a COJ, Confession of Judgment. Now, this law is not a new law, but nobody actually used it. In 2014, only 12 filings of Confession of Judgment suits were filed. 12. Now, there are literally thousands on a monthly basis. Why? Because the cash advance business decided they had unfortunately, a Jewish lawyer take advantage of his brain in a negative way and decided to add this COJ to the application. Why? Because the cash advance business is notorious for lending money to people that don't have money to pay back. That's why subprime mortgages failed eventually, because people bought houses they couldn't afford. So you lend money to people that can't pay it back, or they're just riskier loans. Why are they going to you? Because they can't get it from a bank. That's why they're coming to you. If they could get it from JP Morgan, they could get it from a real bank. Trust me, they're not coming to you. Why? Because the bank's interest is 5%. Your interest in the cash advance business could be as much as 400%. Only a moron will borrow money from such a person, or a desperate person. Moron or desperate, whichever one comes first. Sometimes both. Now, here's the kicker. This COJ is malach hamavet for lending. It's like the death penalty. Why? Because a person that borrows money, he signs an application. If things don't work out, I lose the money. I borrowed money from you, I lose the money. In a regular JP Morgan, Chase, Wells Fargo bank, I lose the money, I don't have it. They could sue me. We go to court. I could prove my case. They could prove their case. We have years to fight it. If I put collateral, I didn't put collateral, it could take a while. The cash advance business was notorious for losing a lot of money for years. Why? Because most of the borrowers not only were not able to pay it back, but they didn't have much collateral. And even if they had collateral, they would do different types of things to hide the collateral. They would sell it. They would put it to a different entity. Long story short, the borrowers would find a way not to pay back the lenders. So what did the lenders do? They decided to add the COJ. What does a COJ do? COJ is an application that says, I am guilty regardless of what you accuse me of. I already deny my own ability to even go to court. Which means, the minute that somebody is late, we're not even talking about defaults, the minute somebody is late on their payment, its payment is due on the 15th, he forgot to send a check. Forgot to send a check. It happens. You're human after all. Your alert didn't happen. Forgot. Within 48 hours, the lender, the cash advance company, could take all of his possessions that were under collateral of that loan, without a court, without a judge, without even a lawyer. Nothing. They simply take everything without even providing the court a proof that he actually defaulted, or he's late, or even that this is even collateral. They could simply say whatever they want. And within 48 hours, they literally could take possession of his house, his business, his car, everything. Everything that was mentioned on the original agreement. Now, why is this horrible? Because, unfortunately, this leads to a lot of crime from greedy people. That, what do? They are not happy that their guy's paying them 300% interest. It's not enough for them. Just like Mara Masechet Sukkah says, you give somebody 100, he wants 200. You give him 200, he wants 400. They're not happy with the high interest. They want even more. What? They say, listen, what do you want? You want to borrow 50,000? No problem. Pay $500 a month? Okay, no problem. The guy pays 2, 3, 4, 5 months. They get bored. They say, listen, even though we're making good money out of this, we can make more. How? We'll pretend he defaulted. We'll pretend he defaulted. We'll go to the court, say, he defaulted. Why? We don't have to prove anything. We have a COJ. He signed his death penalty. He signed his death penalty over here. We go to the court. The court goes to after the marshal agrees. We go to court 48 hours. All of the collateral is ours. And he cannot even fight it. Like, even if he goes to a lawyer, you know what the lawyer tells him? Can't help you. I cannot help you. Now, this leads to what's called gezel. Gezel is stealing. No person could ever Gan Eden if he has even $1 stolen. If he stole, even $1 that he stole in his life, cannot get it. He cannot go into Gan Eden. So you see, you have another reason of why COJ. Last reason I'm going to tell you. Who knows the first 2 laws that Hitler implemented? Hitler, Yimach Shemo V'Zichro, first 2 laws that Hitler implemented that not only put him in a different status than everybody else for the rest of history, but also made what's called until this day the biggest financial miracle in history. Who knows the first 2 laws? Before the Nuremberg laws. Before that, we're talking about years before it. Hitler first comes into power. What's the first 2 laws? Okay, I'll save you the time. Rule number 1. No more pornography. No more homosexuality. None of that garbage. Not allowed. Berlin, in the 30s, in the 20s, was the Sodom and Gomorrah of the day. They were the Las Vegas of the day. They were the Sodom and Gomorrah of the day. Homosexuality, pornography, all the bestiality, all the garbage of the world, that was the capital of the world. He outlawed it. You're no longer allowed, closed all the bars, all the gay clubs, all the production, which were all run by Jewish people. Unfortunately. Second rule. What's the second rule? Second rule was, you're not allowed to charge interest. No more interest. Now you would think, why? What does he care about interest? Well, because all the people that had the money, that lent the money out, were Jews. He didn't like it. So he said no more interest. Why? Because of the high interest that the Jews charged people was so high, it ruined, it destroyed the economy in Germany. They destroyed, just like they destroyed Russia a few years before that through their communism over there. Jews destroyed Russia, not Goyim. Jews destroyed. Communism is by Jews. Well, don't let anybody confuse you. You look at history, Karl Marx, all the other Reshaim, they're all Jews. Wicked, but nonetheless Jews. They destroyed Russia, and he wrote in chapter 2 of Mein Kampf, they destroyed Russia, now they're destroying Germany, that's why I have to destroy them. Now, this doesn't make he's right. The point is, that's actually real, true history. Now, he saw that the Jews are controlling the financial system, and they're charging such high interest, they destroyed the German economy, to the extent that by the time you arrived to go to the store to buy bread, you had to take a whole horse carriage full of money. By the time you arrived at the store, it wasn't enough. Why? Because the inflation rate was so high. The bread became so much more valuable and your money went down. So now he says, what's the cause of this? Because nobody could afford to do anything because the interest rates are so high. So he decided no more interest rates. You're not allowed to charge interest rates. And at that time, the Great Depression was happening around the entire world. Everyone was in a financial collapse. America was a financial collapse. England was a financial collapse. Everybody else was collapsing. Germany collapsed worse than everybody else. But after he passed this law of no more interest, within 6 years, Germany became the leading, wealthiest economy in the world. They called it a financial miracle. Why? They were the only ones that were bold enough to stop interest. This is one of the biggest reasons of why he hated Jews. Because they destroyed the economy because of their greed. Rabotai, it's not making him right. Don't let this confuse you. But this is happening again. The cash advance business right now is destroying the economy in America. Why? Because all of the people that are defaulting, all of the people that are being stolen from, guess who they are? Small businesses. Small businesses are what build economies, not big businesses. Coca-Cola, Apple, Google, Amazon, all those big companies, they're good for business, but they're not the economy. What makes an economy, what makes an economy prosper, is when there's small businesses starting and small businesses flourishing, because they are the ones that actually hire the most amount of people. If you have small business grow, your economy grows. You have small business decline, your economy declines. I was in the financial business for 20 years. This is one thing you can't challenge. Now, when you have an industry that their number one objective, directly or indirectly, is to destroy small businesses, guess what? This is happening again. And you'll see, if nobody listens to me, nobody listens to the Torah, nobody listens to history, and everybody ignores it, this is going to be a huge blow-up to the extent where you can see how Edom, just like the Torah says, Edom is going to come back again, Edom becomes America. Edom becomes America. Why? Because America is Edom, after all. But you'll see what happens. And you'll see that all of a sudden the 6 million Jews that are in America, that feel comfortable, that are sometimes in government, that are sometimes in politics, that are running big businesses, and so on and so forth, guess what? Same exact thing happened in Germany. We were in politics, we were in business, we were prospering, we were great. In Germany, same exact thing. In Greece, same thing. In Rome, same thing. In Egypt, same thing. But guess what? We get greedy, we get sinful, we become Reshaim. What happens? Hashem says, oh, you want to be Reshaim? I'll punish you. With what? With the same goy that you wanted to become like. And this, Rabotai, is what's happening under our noses. And unfortunately, this, I don't know whether the Gdolim that we have in this world today are unaware or nonchalant. I'm not really sure. All I can tell you is, I've had in my career 5 times, 5, maybe 6 times, where I had a aha moment. Meaning, I saw something, to me was clear as day. I knew this deal was going to work out. I saw a stock, it was $4. I said, this is worth 32. How long? 2, 3, 4 years. It's going to be 32. Sometimes happen faster, sometimes longer. 5 times in my career, certain things like that happened to me, Baruch Hashem. This, for sure, is an aha moment. Unless the government actually, by Chazdei Hashem, by mercy of Hashem, interferes with that industry and completely ruins it, we will see a Holocaust starting from this business. Chavod.
So, I personally do cash advance.
I'm sorry for you. You have to quit.
I have a few questions.
Yes, please.
Questions in regards to that. So, for example, number one, it's not all the time that people can't pay back. My colleague today, for example, had a deal that he closed where he funded an 85 grand deal. Okay, this funded from his bank documents in the past 3 months. I was able to tell with my colleague that in the next 30 days or so, he was going to be able to fund triple the amount if he wanted to. However, my interest rate that we charge with our company wasn't necessarily 300% like you're saying.
Not all of it's 300%, but it's still much higher. It's still usury.
Most capitals like Fox Capital, Weather Momentum, it doesn't matter. They don't charge 300%. That's not true.
No, it goes up to 400%.
Yeah,
It's not standard 400%.
I mean, personally, you happen to know not.
You're not charging 5%. You're not charging 10%. You're not even charging 30.
Usually, the most you'll charge in more or less is up to 80. Usually.
8%? 80. Okay, that's still illegal.
Okay.
Torah-wise and law-wise. At all. Yeah, no, we already covered that. We covered that. Right, I know.
So going back on what I just said, though, is that they can't pay it back. That's number one. Okay?
You're still not allowed to lend them the money, though.
You can't pay that. Number two, what if they're going? We're talking about Jews here.
Mm-hmm.
What if they're going? That's number two. Which,
Right.
yeah, it might sound like, all because they're going doesn't make them different.
Right.
But it is.
No,
fact.
it is or it isn't. Right.
Because I have, the reason why I was in yeshiva for a few years, I wouldn't want to do something that's halakhically, not okay.
Okay, so I'll answer your questions.
I realized that when I spoke to a rabbi who I personally have a case with, he told me that if it's goyim, even though it's not, you're still not doing the correct thing, but it's totally not shy when it comes to Jews. Totally not.
You have to find a new rabbi. So let me explain to you. I'm an honest person, so I don't beat around the bush. I'm going to tell you things as they are. I was on Wall Street for 16 years. I had my own firm. I know a little bit more about the financial business than any rabbi in the world. Why? I was on Wall Street. Before I was a rabbi, I was on Wall Street. I had a firm, I had a brokerage firm, had a hedge fund, had an insurance company. Baruch Hashem, I was an executive. I was on CNBC, I was on Bloomberg. I was somebody. I was somebody. It wasn't like some guy that worked at Merrill Lynch made $100,000 a year. You did an $85,000 deal where you lent somebody $85,000. I made $1.6 million for myself in one day. So there's a little bit of experience that came with it to get to that point. Now, so what I'm trying to explain to you is that it's not a matter of what's the deal, what's the profit, what's the commission, what's the company, what's the industry. It's a matter of what's right, what's wrong, what's allowed, what's not allowed. Now, a Jew, first and foremost, is never allowed to lend another Jew money with interest. Now, the exception is if the Jew that's borrowing the money is a mechalel Shabbat, you're allowed to charge him interest, but they still do not recommend it, because if that Jew does tshuva, you have to pay him back all the interest. But needless to say, you're not allowed to lend the average Jew that keeps Shabbat money and charge him interest. That's rule number one. So that means that any Jew that you deal with, even if you don't know he's a Jew, which most likely you'll run into, because sometimes John Cohen is a Jew, John Cohen is not a Jew. So you're not really going to know. It's not on the application to say, Mr. John, are you a Jew or not? You're not allowed because you'll put you in jail. So you don't know if he's a Jew or not. So that means that every day you have a 50-50 chance of losing Olam Haba. Every day. Who wants to be in such a business? That's number one. Number two, even if you only deal with goyim, you're still not allowed to do something called usury. Usury is overcharging and lending money in such a way, or doing business in such a way where it hurts the public. When you charge somebody an interest that is drastically above the norm being bank rates, regular bank rates, and what's legally allowed according to the law, when you charge them such an interest rate that it becomes very difficult to the extent of almost impossible for the average person to pay it back, you are now in a business where you're taking advantage of people. If he can go to Wells Fargo and get the same loan for 8%, and you're charging him 80%, it doesn't matter that you're not 300%. Even if the average was 8 and you were 15, you are in a problem. Even if the average was 8 and you are 30, you are in a problem. It doesn't have to be 300. 300 just means you're just a psychopath. 80% is still highway robbery. 80% is still against halacha. Still not allowed to do it even for goyim. Why? Because it's usury. But even more so than anything else that I've just said, when this is eventually exposed to the public, it will lead every single member that works for these companies, even as a clerk, even not as a broker, a clerk, a secretary, a janitor, works for ABC Lending, that does cash advance when it's officially disclosed to the world, because Hashem is going to do that. Guess what? Chilul Hashem. And any single person that's involved in Chilul Hashem, the Reshit Chochmah says what the Gemara in Masechet Rosh Hashanah, page 17a says, he goes to Gehenom and he doesn't leave. Ever. Even after Mashiach. So why would anybody want to associate with even 1% of anything I just said? The lending, the taking advantage, the Chilul Hashem, the usury, the unethical, even the rabbi that you said that, you really shouldn't do it, but you can. What kind of rabbi is that? It's a puppet. You have to find yourself a real rabbi that's going to tell you, not allowed. No, not recommended. Not allowed. Not allowed. That's what it is. Not allowed. You have to quit tomorrow. Why? Because I love you and I'm telling you the truth. You have to.
And in regards to, like you said, only that you could, once you do that
COJ. Confession of judgment.
Right? When you do that, they say then you technically have the ability to start taking their property. Their real
Not technically. You take their property in 48 hours.
That's the whole point is that when it comes to cash rents, especially what the Jews are doing, they have no sense at all in this. They're not allowed to touch. They don't have collateral. They just can't do it. Only the banks are able to do that.
Wrong.
COJ doesn't permit them to just take away
You're
the
wrong.
property.
You're wrong. Before I say something, I research it.
I'll speak to my boss who's been in
You can
business
speak
for
to your boss
40
till
years.
next year. I'm telling you. I know what I'm talking about. I did a research before I say anything. Huh?
My boss has been in business for 40
Okay, but you can look at your application. The application does not give a bank. It gives the company that lent the money, the COJ. But again, the company is the cash advance business. They owe money. They're borrowing money from the bank. But they're the ones that collect it, not the bank. The bank sues your company. Your company is the one that goes collect the money. How about this? Do yourself a favor. Go on Bloomberg. Go on Google, go on Bloomberg. You look at cash advance business. It's a 5-part article explaining the entire industry for you. Everything I just said with a little bit of sugar on it. Everything I just said without the Torah part. I'll tell you exactly about all the criminals that are in the business. Unfortunately, one thing that we know, I know personally, that the article doesn't know as much, is that predominantly the people that are in this business are guys that used to be in the brokerage business that went to jail, criminals, thieves, psychopaths, mafia, but predominantly it's Orthodox Jews. Predominantly it's Orthodox Jews funding it, selling it, and you have even yeshiva kids that have no skills whatsoever going into that business and starting to make $10,000, $20,000 a month without even knowing what to do. Why? This is much worse than the boiler room days of the stock market business was 30 years ago. Because back then, 30 years ago, when there were unethical brokers in the world, you still had to have selling skills. Why? Because at the end of the day, the guy is giving you money, and you're giving him a dream. Here, you're the one giving him the money. There's no selling. You don't have to do anything. Why? He's the one calling you, asking you, please lend me money. He doesn't know that he's signing a death sentence. He doesn't know that he's about to lose everything he has if you're crooked, if you wink the wrong way, if you have a bad memory, if your alarm doesn't go off. He doesn't know any of that stuff. He thinks, no, you're Joe, my friend. Joe calls me every Tuesday until we close the deal. Guess what? Joe's no longer in a deal after you sign. The broker is no longer in a deal. You call him after the COJ is being implemented. Joe doesn't pick up the phone. Why? Joe's not in control. He's just a broker. He got paid his commission. Rabotai, if you are in this business, if you know somebody in this business, and you don't hate them, and you don't hate yourself, you have to send them what I just said, and you have to get them out of that business no matter what you have to do. If you love Jews, you have to let people know this is going to bring an ason to Am Yisrael. It's going to bring a disaster to Am Yisrael. It's going to bring a disaster no different than the Holocaust. And we can't rely on mitzvot that we're doing, because right now, the Prime Minister of Israel, this moron, Bibi Netanyahu, decided to make an halacha himself. What did he decide? Rabotai, we need Eurovision. The Toivat Hashem, the disgustingness of Hashem, the singing competition, where last year's winner is a transvestite Israeli. We want to bring it to Eretz Yisrael for the third time, really the fourth time, but the third time, and you have the permission to violate Shabbat for it. He decided, Bibi Netanyahu, that as a Shul Torah every Tuesday, he decided that 30,000 Jews are allowed to violate the Shabbat coming up. Rav Kanievsky and Rav Edelman, two Gadolei Ador, just wrote a letter today, published a letter today. They said all of Am Yisrael is in sakana. All of Am Yisrael is in sakana right now. All of us have to, tomorrow night, pray, go to the Beit Knesset, read specific Tehillim. I can tell you which ones they are. Blow a shofar, and do everything possible to ask Hashem for forgiveness, ask Hashem for mercy. Because right now there's something that's happening that most of you guys don't understand what it is. The magnitude of what's happening. Rav Kanievsky doesn't write letters. Let me just tell you that. People say a lot of things in his name. Rav Kanievsky doesn't write letters. He doesn't write letters. He's too busy learning Torah. People say things in his name that he doesn't say. What he says is usually in books. He doesn't write letters. He wrote a letter. He publicized the letter, and he says all of Am Yisrael right now is in serious danger. And we already have signs of it. The day after, Bibi Netanyahu said that 30,000 Jews are allowed to violate Shabbat because suddenly he became a posek. Okay, for Eurovision, for this garbage, for homosexuality, for immodesty, for znut, for all the garbage in the world, 30,000 people are going to violate Shabbat for it. Guess what? The next day, or within 48 hours, 700 missiles were shot at Am Yisrael. 700 missiles within 48 hours. That's not enough? Rav Kanievsky, a few other rabbis spoke about it. Rav Kanievsky wrote a letter. Guess what happened today? There was a 4.4 earthquake in Yerushalayim and across the entire country. Israel does not get earthquakes. We're not America. We're not Los Angeles. You have an earthquake in Eretz Yisrael, Gemara says you have a very serious problem. Why? There's psukim in the Torah to talk about it. Psukim in the Torah talk about it. Why does Hashem give earthquakes? Why does Hashem give earthquakes? You look at the Gemara in Yerushalmi, Masechet Brachot, the Perek 9, Halacha number 2. It says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, on one end, it says in Tehillim that he looks at the land favorably. and gives it sustenance from the beginning of the year until the end. But then in another one it says Kol Tuv. Then in another one it says that he looks in the land and he makes it tremble. Why? He says when people do certain things that are good, he looks at it favorably. When people do certain things that are bad, he brings earthquakes. What are the good and the bad? So the Gemara says the following. The Gemara says, when people build theaters and circuses and events and they celebrate with things that are against Hashem, Hashem sits there in Shemaim looking at them and gets angry to the point where he wants to destroy the world because his house is destroyed, the Bet HaMikdash is destroyed, and they're sitting there relaxing in a theater at Eurovision. They're over there at the Eurovision and they're having a good time. But he, the Melech Malchei HaMelachim, is in Shemaim, he's crying over his Bet HaMikdash, but you're having a good time. He says this gives him the feeling to destroy the entire world. That's what God says. But then Eliyahu Navi says to Rabbi Meir, says, yes, that's one aspect of it, but there's something else too. What else is there? It says that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu looks at the world, he sees that people are far away from him. He sees that people are far away from him to such an extent that they're not doing the will of Hashem. In more ways than just the theaters. What ways? Rav Acha says one of the few things that causes earthquakes is when there is a increase in homosexuality. And then one of the other Amoraim, the Rabbanan actually, the rabbis, say, oh, it's not just that, it's the machloket. It's the different debates, the disagreements, divorces, partnerships breaking, stealing, and things of that nature. Now, we have ourselves several different reasons of why the Gemara says that Hashem shakes the land. He brings earthquakes as a sign that you have to do tshuva, whether it's homosexuality, or it's being in a theater, immodesty, or perhaps it is the different types of machlokets and debates and so on that people have that are not for Shamayim. Eurovision is not the first time that it's coming to Eretz Yisrael. This is the third time. And Hashem says to the prophet Amos, he says to the prophet Amos in the chapter 1 and 2, he says it about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. 7 times he says, כה אמר אדוני על 3 פשעי עזה ועל 4 לא אשיבנו. Or he says, כה אמר השם על 3 פשעי צור ועל 4 לא ישיבנו. Or he says again, כה אמר השם על 3 פשעי אדום על 4 לא אשיבנו. What does it all say? Why does he keep mentioning the same thing 7 times? Hashem says, thus said Hashem, for the first 3 transgressions that you did at Edom, at Gaza, at Tyre, different things, first 3 times you made the sin, I looked away. I looked somewhere else. I said, oh, give him time. But the 4th one, I will not pardon it. And I will punish you with the sword and with suppress my mercy and punish you with anger and slaughter and incessantly and so on and so forth. It says horrible things. You want to read it yourself, you can read it. They're just going to make you cry. Rabotai, what's happening right now is not the 3rd time, it's the 4th time. Aside from that, this event is full of immodesty, full of Chilul Shabbat, represented by a transvestite. But last but not least, the Gadol Ador are crying over it, saying that this is going to bring a disaster to Am Yisrael. Why? Because the government of Israel always says that it doesn't have enough money to feed the poor. Right now, statistically speaking, we did a little bit of a research. It says there are 1 million kids, 1 million Jewish kids in Eretz Yisrael that go to sleep starving every night, hungry every night. 1 million kids. 1 million Jewish kids in Eretz Yisrael going to sleep hungry. Now, if I was the governor, or if anybody normal was the governor, and you knew that there's 1 million out of 8 million, 12% of your population, and probably 35-40% of the actual kids in the country are going to sleep hungry every day, the least you should do is what? Feed them. Feed them. But you know what? You could do something even less. What can you do? Try to save money so you can feed them in the future. Because you don't have money right now. That's why they're hungry, right? So try to save money. What does Bibi Netanyahu do? He takes 50 million shekels, 50 million shekels, and instead of feeding hungry kids, what does he do? He spends it on Eurovision, to bring Eurovision to Eretz Yisrael. So not only is he telling 30,000 people to violate Shabbat, not only is he promoting homosexuality, immodesty, and all the garbage of the world, but on top of it, instead of actually giving money to the hungry kids in his own country, what is he doing? He's spending it on homosexuality and Toivat Hashem and all that stuff. This is why, Rabotai, the Gadolei Ador are starting to cry, because they know that disaster is the only thing that follows such a thing. So, what's happening right now in the world of Jews is far more dangerous than anything we've ever seen in our life. The only thing you can compare it to is every single time span that took place right before a disaster. Whether it was the Spanish Inquisition or the Holocaust or the Bet HaMikdash, the first one, the second one, every time these disasters happened, there was many signs. There were writing on the wall. Like we talked about a few weeks ago about the Holocaust, all the things that happened for years. Before the Holocaust finally happened, unfortunately, there were many signs. And I'm afraid to tell you that right now, all of that is happening again. And it's happening in a much more rapid pace. And it's very scary. Now, all we can do is very limited. One, we could bring you the facts. Do what you want with them. You can curse me out, you could write stupid comments, or you could do something about it. What we're trying to do is, number one, publicize it. Publicize that we're all in danger right now as a nation. Whether you're in America, or you're in Bulgaria, or you're in Israel, it doesn't really make a difference. Once there's a decree on everyone. Whether you keep Shabbat or you don't keep Shabbat, there's a decree on everyone when there's a decree. So every single person should take on themselves some type of mitzvah, something that they're not doing, something that they're weak. If you are immodest as a woman, this is the time to become modest. Why? At least to fix the tikkun of the immodesty that's being promoted this weekend. If you are mechalel Shabbat, this is the time to start keeping Shabbat. At least start with this Shabbat. Keep this Shabbat. Why? 30,000 Jews are not going to keep Shabbat. This Shabbat, if this happens.
But they were keeping Shabbat already?
Some were. Some were, unfortunately. If you're not keeping Shabbat, now is the time to start keeping Shabbat. If you're not modest, now is the time to start being modest. If you're not promoting Torah, if you're not doing kiruv, if you're not donating to kiruv, now is the time to do it. You have to give Am Yisrael merits right now, because we are in danger. We are in very serious danger. And last but not least, what we're trying to do is we're actually trying to raise some money for poor kids ourselves. Even though this is not the primary goal of our organization, we're a kiruv organization, we're trying to save neshamot. But when you hear that there's 1 million Jewish kids that don't have money, when you hear that there's poor religious families that we know in Yerushalayim don't have food for Shavuot, it's hard to go to sleep in your nice, comfortable American home and 15, 20, 50, 100, 200, $500,000 in the bank like some people have. It's hard to do that. Now, we don't have much money because we lost, Baruch Hashem, all of it. But we have a mouth, we have a website, we have an organization, and we're trying to raise as much money as we can. So we're starting a new campaign, B'ezrat Hashem, tomorrow to try to raise as much money as we possibly can to at least get this family some food for Shavuot. Now, we're not going to be able to feed 1 million people overnight or permanently. But we're going to try to do whatever we can. If we can feed 5 people, great. If we can feed 500, great. For Pesach, Baruch Hashem, we fed over 400 people. 400 people, Yishtabach Shimo. 400 people ate because of what we tried to do. B'ezrat Hashem, we do 1,000 times more this time. I don't know how much. All I know is, Rabotai, everybody has to do something. But not just one thing. Because there's a lot more people that unfortunately are putting the rest of the nation in danger than usual. Whether it's the president of the country, the prime minister, whatever you call him, or it's the secular government, or it's the secular people, or it's the confused people, or it's the confused rabbis, or it's the businessmen that are not really businessmen, but they're just crooks with a suit. There's just a lot going on, Abutai. And now it's time for us to do something about it. Every person has to do something. If you could take on a mitzvah, do it. If you could give tzedakah, do it. If you could do both, do it. But do something. This is one of the things that I wanted to tell you tonight. Other stuff, Baruch Hashem, came from the questions. I think that some of the stuff scared some of the people away. But we have to say it. We have to say it because the reality is you're stuck with me. This is the saddest news of the world. Really, I'm serious. You're laughing, Betzalel, but I'm very serious. You see, in the previous generations, you look at the Gemara. In previous generation, nobody ever liked the person that was giving people the truth. When Jeremiah came to Am Yisrael and he told them that they're sinners, you know what they did? They started beating him up. They started causing him to do bad things, and so on and so forth. They started torturing him. He cursed the day he was born. When Zechariah, he says the pasuk in the Torah, he says to Hashem, I cursed the day that you brought me to this world. Jeremiah, Kodesh Kodashim, curses the day he was born. Zechariah, Navi Kodesh, Gemara Masechet Gitin, page 57b, says something, I mean, it's hard to even say. Zechariah came to the people, told them you have to do tshuva. You know what they did? They slaughtered him like a cow. They slaughtered him like a cow. And they left all of his blood. And guess what? The blood never left. The blood never left. The Gemara says, Nebuzaradan, the sergeant, the general of Nebuchadnezzar that destroyed the Beit HaMikdash, came over there and he saw that there's blood boiling on the floor. Years after it happened. Not like a week later. Years later, he sees there's blood boiling over there. And he asks the rabbis over there, the Jews over there, he goes, what is this? What is this? He goes, no, nothing. He goes, what nothing? I saw a lot of blood. Never saw blood boiling before. What is this? Oh, no, it's just one of our korbanot. We do sacrifices here in Yerushalayim. We do sacrifices. So it's the blood of one of the korbanot. He goes, oh, yeah? Show me. Show me. I want to see. I want to see how the blood boils. I want to see how it happens. What are they going to do? There's a general that just slaughtered 10 million people. So they take a little sheep, slaughter it, blood comes out. Guess what? Goes into the ground, doesn't stay up, doesn't boil, nothing. Nebuzaradan wasn't stupid. Vicious, but not stupid. He says to them, if you don't tell me where this blood came from, I'm going to slaughter every single one of you like you slaughtered the sheep. What are they going to do? They said, listen, truth is, this is the blood of Zechariah. Our prophet, we slaughtered him because he told us to do tshuva. He told us we're making mistakes. We didn't like it, so we killed him. And now his blood is boiling because he's taking vengeance. Nebuzaradan says, I'm going to take vengeance for him. He started killing everybody. He started killing millions of people. He killed the adults. He started killing people left and right. Came back to the blood, said it was still boiling, continued killing. Came back to the blood, said it was still boiling, continued killing. It got to a point where literally there was just a few good ones left. He says to the blood, he says, Zechariah, Zechariah, I killed the worst of them. You want me to kill the best of them too? You want me to kill everybody too? The rest of them? The whole nation? The blood stopped boiling. On the spot it stopped. And then Nebuzaradan, mass murderer, did a kal vachomer, did a calculation in his head. He said, wait a minute. Look what happened here. These Jewish people slaughtered their own prophet, and look what just happened to them. Their God gave me power to kill all of them. All of these people just died because they killed one guy. What's going to happen to me for killing all of those people? At that moment, he took off his uniform, sent a suicide letter back home as if he killed himself, put on a sack as if he was a slave like the Jews, and joined Am Yisrael, converted on the spot. He realized that everything that just happened was from God. Even the death of a Jew. This is in the Gemara Maseret Gitin, you could see it. It's horrific, horrific story. Now, Rabotai, when Zechariah rebuked people, they killed them. Jeremiah rebuked people, they tried to kill him. For generation after generation, we've always had people rebuke and tell people, to remind people what the Torah says. Now, before the Holocaust, we had some of Gadolei Ador, we had Chafetz Chaim cry and beg people to take him door to door to help people do tshuva. Chafetz Chaim. Rav Wasserman, Alav Shalom, told people that what I told you a couple of weeks ago. There's going to be a disaster coming soon. Please, please do tshuva, do something. Now, see, there's a very sad situation in this generation. The English-speaking world doesn't have Jeremiah. The English-speaking world doesn't have Zechariah. The English-speaking world doesn't have Chafetz Chaim or Rav Wasserman. The English-speaking world doesn't have even one of their shoes. It has Rav Mizrahi, Shichyeh, and it has me. That's what you're stuck with, guys. There's a couple of Rav Zitron, Baruch Hashem, also, and a couple of others here and there. This is where we're at. This is what you have. You don't have anything great. This is how low we've become. You're stuck with me. This is what you have. Why? Because your local rabbi is going to tell you what this young man just told me 20 minutes ago. What? The local rabbi told him, go into the cash advance business. It's not really ethical, but it's okay. What is that? Is that a rabbi or a bank robber? Who is that? Nebuchadnezzar or Nebuzaradan? It's definitely not Zechariah. What kind of rabbi is this? Tells his student to go into an illegal business? What kind of rabbi is this? Rabotai, you don't have much. But you know what? You don't need much. Because you have the Torah. You have a Torah, and you have a distinct difference between someone that lies to you and someone that tells you the truth. Why? You have a lot of people singing to you. A lot of people telling you jokes. And there's only a couple of them that tell you the truth. And the truth, how do you know what it is? It hurts. It hurts, it agrees with the Torah, and it's unchallengeable. That's what it is. So please, take the things that I say to heart. Do something about them, please. Whether it's donate, or tshuva, or all of the above, do something. If you don't have money, and you are tzaddik, then be a bigger tzaddik. Come with me to my car, I'll give you a bunch of free CDs, give it to people, hopefully they do tshuva too. Whatever, if you have time and a pulse, you could do something. You could do something. Don't just sit there on your hands and say, I'm sure somebody else is going to do it. I'm sure somebody else is going to donate now. I'm sure somebody else is going to do kiruv now. I'm sure somebody else is going to say something. Don't be one of those losers. Be a winner. Be a leader. Be somebody that does something. Don't worry about everybody else. You do something. Just like some people, Baruch Hashem, here took the initiative, started bringing people, started taking money out of their pocket to pay kids to come to the shiur. Think about it. Why? Other than loving Am Yisrael, why would anybody pay somebody else, a complete stranger, to come learn Torah? Why? Because you want to make Hashem happy. Right now, we have a problem. Hashem is completely unhappy. He just shook Eretz Yisrael in a way that's pretty clear. It's not supposed to be this way. Rabbi Ephraim called me a few minutes after it happened. He says, I was in a room, the whole room shook. In Yerushalayim, I was in a room, the whole room shook. The house shook. My wife is not sure what was happening. I thought, well, something's wrong with the floor. Like, well, never such a thing. Now, it wasn't a 7.0 chas v'shalom or 7.9 like the Goyim have, because Hashem still loves us. But he's clearly telling us he's not happy. He's not happy about Eurovision. He's not happy about this homosexuality. He's not happy about illegal businesses that are happening in America and other places. He's not happy about how people are behaving when it comes to business. He's not happy that people are declaring divorce as soon as there's a little misunderstanding. He's not happy about a lot of things. Now, we can't fix all those things ourselves, but we can fix ourselves, and we can try to influence other people to fix something. That's the only thing that we ask ourselves. But if you're going to wait for Moshe Rabbeinu to arrive, if you're going to wait for the Mashiach to arrive, if you're going to wait for Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov to arrive before you do something about it, I can tell you already now, don't wait. Why? It's going to be too late. It's going to be too late. So please take this seriously. I apologize for scaring some of you, but there's nothing I can do about it. Reality is scary, and I promise you it's much, much scarier than I'm telling you. I contain myself, believe it or not. I contain myself for some of the things that I know, because I know that simply if I say more, it's not going to be very. This is enough to, hopefully, the clever among you that are watching, that are here, that are watching on the internet, the clever among you are going to get the point. Situation is not good. At all. At all, at all. At all, at all. Like none, there's not an ounce of good. Get the point. Take the initiative. Do something about it. I'm sorry for scaring you. I really, really am. I don't mind scaring you on Genom and Kafakela, all that other stuff, because that's just reading the Torah. But this is like a reality check, that something's happening and it's not good. So please take the initiative. Do something. Do something. Please, I beg you. Do something. Sedem? Next week, B'ezrat Hashem, I'm going to see you on Sunday. I really can't do any more today. No more questions. I'm done. Next week, I'm going to see you on Sunday. B'ezrat Hashem, we're going to be here doing a different shiur about bitachon. B'ezrat Hashem, we need a lot of bitachon to survive. Hopefully by then we got good news that the Eurovision was canceled or something, happened over there that nobody died, but at least nobody showed up either. And B'ezrat Hashem, everybody just starts doing tshuva. Sunday we have a shiur here. Then B'ezrat Hashem, I'm going to New York. Anyone that wants to come to the shurim in New York, there's going to be Monday night in Queens, Tuesday afternoon in Manhattan, and Tuesday night in Queens, B'ezrat Hashem, and then Wednesday I'm going to be back here, B'ezrat Hashem, doing the shiur that we have here, the questions. Hopefully some of you are not too scared, then you could actually come back. We'll have a different question set. Kol Tov, Aslacha Rabba, Baruch Adonai L'olam, Amen ve'amen.